Hello, all you positive heads out there. Thanks for tuning your beautiful brainwaves into another episode of the Positive Head Podcast, which I'm excited to say we're now airing 5 days a week. Once a week, you can still hear an interview with a different consciousness changemaker that is out there working tirelessly to help catalyze change and expand awareness on Spaceship Earth. But now, in addition to the weekly interview, on the other 4 weekdays, you can tune in to myself and my co-host Dalien taking questions from the audience, covering a bit of positive news, giving interpretations of a favorite quote to ponder, and you can hear us ranting about whatever other positive ponderings come to mind on that day. And as you guys might imagine, producing this podcast is definitely a labor of love for me and Dalien. But make no mistake, it takes a lot of hard work to put it together for you guys, especially now that we're doing it 5 days a week. So if you enjoy the fruits of our labor, please go over, give us a good rating and a review on iTunes. Subscribe for free while you're at it, of course, if you haven't done that already. iTunes truly is the holy grail when it comes to podcasting, and good ratings and reviews are what help our iTunes ranking so that we can gain more exposure in the massive sea of other podcasts that are out there. Even if you have terrible ADD and don't want to take the time to write out a review, trust me, I get it. I'm a bit of a spaz too, but please take at least, the 9.2 seconds it takes to give the show an honest star rating, which only takes one little click. I assure you it will be very much appreciated by us, and that the good karma gods will rain blessings down upon thee for doing so. All right, all you positive heads, welcome back to another episode of the Positive Head Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Beecham. I've got my co-host, Dalien, the alien, here with me. Hello, Dalien.
Hello, Brandon. How are you?
Well, we should tell everyone, Dalien is actually your name all mixed up, right? Daniel, Dalien? Ah, you're
exactly.
So clever.
It's very clever wordplay on my part.
Yeah,
I transposed a couple letters and
it's like the alien sort of thing.
That's right. Exactly.
I like it. Now you guys understand. There is some logic to this madness.
Yes. There's a couple meanings in which the whole alien thing could be taken, because I am from Chile, right? From South America, born and raised. Although I'm working on getting my American citizenship. But
isn't it incredible? He has no accent, hardly, very, very, very little.
Right. But then the other meaning that I find funny is that you and your brother have joked through the years that, and I've gone along with this, that I might be actually from another planet as well, right?
True.
So
there's definitely some of that potentiality there with your oddities and weirdness.
Exactly.
So anything exciting going on today in your world before we get into the normalities of what is the Positive Head Podcast?
Anything exciting in my world? Let's see. My music, I guess. I'm working on a little bit of my music here and there, right? Original music that
we'll have to bust that out on the people one day when it's time. Actually, we've been leaving everyone with a song lately, and when we then turn around and post the podcast out there, it's gotten flagged on places like YouTube because of copyright, which, we're trying to promote it, actually, not trying to make money off of it. But so I don't know. For now, maybe we'll stop adding music until we can figure out some kind of workaround, or just posting music of our various friends that are producers and things like that. So yeah, unfortunately, you have these automated bots that scrape for anything that's a major release or any sort of song that's notable out there, and they'll just automatically take your post down. So I don't, it's not worth it. Unfortunately, it's a shame because we're trying to really help the artist. But I guess I understand why it's there. It's just a little bit.
In this brave new world of digital music, that's just kind of how it goes, right?
Exactly. So, what's going on in my world? Let's see. It's been, as I mentioned in the podcast a few days ago, it's been a little bit of a rougher week with some personal stuff that's going on, to be very forthright. And maybe when the time's right, I'll go into some of it. It's really not, I need to probably wait for various reasons now to talk about any of it. But I was talking to my good friend SueKrebs about it, who actually is a writer for Positive Head and does the breakdown. She actually was on a podcast last week. I believe she came on and read her positive pondering quote and breakdown. And she had something really, really great to say that I want to share with you guys. She said, well, just ask yourself this, because it's basically the issue is an opportunity, a great piece of my life, opportunity wise, career wise, is hit a road bump, and her response was, well, ask yourself this. I wonder what better options the universe is bringing us to replace this issue. How can it become even bigger and better than we ever thought? And that is such a great perspective. And I think if you look at your story whenever you're having a struggle or hit a roadblock or, a hiccup, what does this hiccup represent? And how can it actually, even though maybe at first glance look like a problem or, a setback, in my case, it only takes me, very short period of time to say, okay, I know it's happening for some reason. What is this setback? What is this obstacle for? And how do we overcome it? Or how does it redirect my energy in another way that is more beneficial to my life path? And so I really appreciated her wisdom on that. And so enough so that I thought I would actually share it. And so that really leads me into the next thing that I want to do, which is the positive pondering breakdown of the day. And it's one that was written by Sue. Sue couldn't join us to read it live today on the show, so I'm going to do it for her. And the quote goes like this. Life is all about balance. Be kind, but don't let people abuse you. Trust, but don't be deceived. Be content, but never stop improving yourself. And that is an unknown quote. So I love it very much. And here's what her breakdown is. Life is a balancing act. Some days are good, some are great, and some just plain suck. That's all part of the mix. That's all part of the experience of being human. So how are we supposed to navigate this ever-changing, ever-evolving mix of peaks and valleys? I think the key does lie in finding our balance. Certainly, there are many components that go into making life manageable, particularly when we feel bombarded and overwhelmed. Some days it's just about slowing things down to the very basic element of breathing. Just breathe. I've used that mantra more times than I can count. Just breathe. This too shall pass. Holding our breath during times of stress may well be a reflex reaction, but it is definitely not helpful. Holding our breath until the painful experience passes might not be feasible either. Better to breathe through it all. Slowly, deeply, it will pass. So many tools can be used, and in fact are probably necessary to maintain our footing in life. Positive thinking and meditation are helpful. Finding the good in all situations. Faith and trust. I'm learning to lean on the trust I have in the inevitable success of each experience. I believe and now trust that things are in fact always working out for me. Oh, yes, I know. I hear those of you saying, but what about fill in the blank? There are so many experiences and situations that certainly defy my assessment that things are working out. What about abuse, murder, mayhem, etc.? How can those horrible experiences ever be considered good or positive? This is where a shift in perspective is required to understand that conclusion. One must take a step back from the event itself to where one can see the bigger picture, the larger ramifications. Sometimes those horrible events become the catalyst for a positive life change or a complete shift in one's direction in life. It was when I began to address my childhood sexual abuse that I shifted careers from engineer to therapist. Bad things can lead to good outcomes. Perhaps this is the balance of experiencing life in the physical dimension while incorporating a spiritual perspective. Again, balance. We're having both experiences simultaneously. One is not better than the other. One might be more comfortable for us to navigate, but that doesn't make it better. Both are necessary. Both are vital to our growth and evolution, which is what I believe life is all about ultimately. Accepting life as the profusion of experience that it is, we can value each of them as contributors to the tapestry of our individual lives, each adding color or texture to the overall picture. And in our balance, we find appreciation for it all. That was very beautifully broken down by Sue. Thank you for that, Sue. It's so perfect, the timing of that message, because it perfectly correlates to what I was just sharing as my personal experience. So once again, the synchronicities line up as we take a look at what's happening in life, and so many times, whether it be a note from the universe or a note from Sue, that is actually really helping to guide and give me inspiration. And I hope it's doing the same for you guys out there listening, because, I know part of kind of bearing my soul with my own personal trials and tribulations and Sue here, being brave enough to talk about sexual abuse and things from her past, she's bearing, her soul to you, the listeners, in writing this. And it's something that everyone can probably relate to, either in your present moment or in a past moment, or certainly in a future moment for any of you who have, will have, hard times or experiences yet to come. And if you can remember these ideas, these concepts of it's all happening for some greater good, and you're looking for that, what can this, parlay me into that's even greater and better than I ever imagined? Instead of, poor me, I'm screwed here, all is lost, what am I going to do? And that's the tempting thing to do so often, so many times. And when you do that, the problem is you're drumming up, that vibration, that energy. And so you're attracting more of that sort of experience. The best thing you can do is tell a story that is, that is a good one. We're making up our realities. We're making up the way it all is meant to go down.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What a great quote. And what a challenging thing to try and do when you're about to be confronted with something that you can see is going to be challenging, to decide ahead of time, or to even remember, hey, even though this thing normally would cause me to become fearful, agitated, to try and remember, oh, this could be an opportunity. This could be an opportunity to change so much in my life and to change it for the better. Or like Sue said in her blog, when something's already happened, maybe even many years ago, that was, horrible, really, like sexual abuse, right? The temptation would be to see it as a horrible thing, but, again, an opportunity to decide that this thing that, maybe happened a long time ago that's, caused you pain for many years actually could yield to something much greater. And the whole story thing is also so great because it goes back to the whole ProCabYouLarry thing, everything neuro-linguistic programming, which could be another, term to refer to the same thing, right? Right. It all comes down to those stories. Right. And that's just so important to try and remember.
Yeah. When you realize your whole life and all of existence is nothing but a great story that, God's source, your higher self, is telling. It's a dream. You're in a illusory reality right now. The phone, the computer that you're listening to this podcast through, it appears to be this solid, tangible thing. It's actually as intangible as the sound waves that you're hearing. Right. It's made of a different sort of vibration that appears to be more solid, is all that it is. But in actuality, when we look at what it's made of particles that are vibrations of energy in, they're 99.999% space.
Right. It's all very quote unquote real when you just unquestionably believe it is, right?
Right.
When you just assume it's real, but if you should ever, start taking a step back and going like, wait a minute, maybe, these things aren't real. Maybe these things aren't so solid after all, like you just said, right? And maybe these challenging life circumstances are, not quite what they appear at face value.
Right. Life is, your reality is malleable. You're telling a story. And I think it's very important when you have a challenge, especially, to spin your story in a way that is taking you right out of the challenge and on to the next thing. And you may hit more bumps. That's fine. You just keep looking at it, looking for the silver lining. How can this lead to something even greater and greater than I ever imagined before? Oh, why is this directing me a different direction? Why is this unforeseen quote unquote problem happening? How is it really a blessing in disguise? Wow, I can't wait until I uncover what that blessing in disguise is. What an adventure. Look at me now in the midst of this trial, feeling good, in spite of what's in front of me. Wow, I must be growing. I must be rising in my, in my own evolution and raising my vibration in spite of what's happening external. That is a challenge. And that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And when you can have those experiences, it's the type of thing that you look back on and it makes you appreciate the upside of the mountain. It makes you appreciate all the good things. And so, for me personally, with my own little challenge that I'm facing right now, it's all that. It's how can I'll have moments where I'll catch myself feeling down or bummed or disappointed. And then it's like, oh, look at what you're doing. What story are you telling? Let's change the story. And it gets easier and easier with time. And so that's, that is the goal. It's one thing to understand all these ideas conceptually, but at some point you also got to live it.
Right.
And that becomes the life goal and the path that I've been on for so long and that this podcast is all about. And, a lot of it we talk about and we'll continue to talk about. We'll circle this topics over and over and over again because it's the same way we learn in school,
Right.
Redundancy, keep pounding it into our head. We're rewiring our brains here. And the more you listen to podcasts like this or, other teachers that are out there, sharing wisdom, the more you're actually rewiring your brain, you're rerouting your brain in a way that is, you create new connections with every thought. With every time you have a negative thought and you reinforce that, you're creating new connections. Every time you have a positive thought and you're creating new connections. So it's really important to understand how malleable this reality is, and including that it goes all the way to your own brain.
Oh, yeah. I have my own little phrase that I like to use sometimes. It's something like when the rubber of your thoughts and feelings meets the road of life. That place where, all these conceptual, all these grand understandings that we can have, that we can gain like pretty easily, have to be applied. And I love really living in that place. And of course, all these like esoteric things that we talk about once in a while, trips to unknown dimensions or, these profound psychedelic experiences you can have. Those are fascinating.
Yeah.
But it's what they bring you that you can bring back from that crazy place to your everyday life. That's what, to me, is just like really what it's all about.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of those fascinating, stories of synchronicity and so forth, it's for the first time, we just released the podcast with Eric Zimmer, the host of the One You Feed podcast, or co-host of the One You Feed podcast, and they're actually a Best of iTunes 2014. Highly recommend it to you guys if you haven't checked it out. My interview with him or their podcast, as well. But, Dalien, for the first time I realized I forgot to ask him his story of synchronicity in our recording. And what's so funny is I even had a story of synchronicity with the One You Feed the night before the actual recording. Normally with interviews, we'll record them and then we release them a week or two later. But the night before recording, my girlfriend, Anna, is wanting to watch a movie. She chooses Tomorrowland, and it was the whole theme of it. They kept going back to the story of the One You Feed. Actually, I talked about this a little bit before. It was just hearing the release of the Eric Zimmer podcast. I'm like, man, I forgot to not only get his story of synchronicity, and he had one, but also forgot to share mine. How literally hours before I go to record the host of the One You Feed podcast, I randomly watch this movie that's constantly talks about the story of the One You Feed. So it was a really cool little, I call them winks from the universe.
Those are fascinating.
Yeah, totally. So let's see, Mr. Dalien, what do you got as far as a positive story of the day?
And now for your positive story of the day.
I've got an article from the website bodymindsoulspirit.com. That's Body, Mind, Soul, Spirit. It's an article from last week regarding research on fluoride and what it can do for our pineal gland, okay? Now, we know, of course, that fluoride has been added to the water. I think it began to be added to the water around the end of World War II. Mm-hmm. And it's ostensibly in the water to help strengthen our bones and our teeth, right, to promote dental health. Now, one of the things that I think is interesting is that I heard that recently, I don't know if it's just the state of California, but they've begun to actually scale back the amount of fluoride that's in the water. One of the things that they found is that this level of fluoride that we've been consistently ingesting, if you're drinking potable water in most any, civilized place, I guess, in the U.S., it can potentially cause streaks in your teeth and just discoloration. Mm-hmm. So that's supposedly the reason that they're just sort of, scaling that back again. But this article, of course, talks about the fact that the pineal gland becomes highly calcified by deposits of fluoride. And of course, there's a bunch of people now that are speculating this could be something that perhaps was intentional, perhaps is a form of keeping the pineal gland of most everyone just heavily calcified and what that could do. But there's an interesting thing that the article mentions, which is the fact that, of course, our current understanding of what the pineal gland does, which isn't real great anyway, one of the things that they do know is that it's very linked to production of melatonin. And melatonin is a very essential neurotransmitter, right? So it's crucial to your well-being. Now, a heavily calcified pineal gland may be at a disadvantage when it comes to melatonin production. And what that could lead to is things like Alzheimer's.
Wow.
So there's a connection between a calcified pineal gland and the prevalence of things like Alzheimer's disease.
Wow. Well, and the most interesting thing that I've heard over the years is the pineal gland, of course, being the third eye, where your psychic center. And the interesting thing is it has physical characteristics of a regular eye, like rods and cones and things like that. So when you talk about people having like a psychic vision or, something like that, it's the activation of the third eye. Supposedly that is where that you're seeing that within the mind's eye. It is literally like the third eye. And you can look back even to ancient Egypt and places like that where they have carvings and it looks just like the pineal gland. And of course there's all over the world, there's, symbolism of pine cones, which is kind of what it, is a representation of what it kind of looks like and everything. Mm-hmm. And so, for that reason, I stopped using fluoride toothpaste and, of course, drink water that is filtered and with no fluoride and things like that for many years now, because it, the calcification of your third eye, all these other health related things. But then when you talk about, your third eye being sort of your connection to your higher vision, it's a really detrimental thing as well. So mm-hmm. that's something to consider. So if you're taking in on fluoride, I recommend that you don't do the research, check it out. The third eye is, it's a real thing. It's a real portal to seeing beyond your five senses.
Yeah. Well, add a couple links to the research that goes a little bit more in detail into this, mm-hmm. so people can follow through and see, what the studies are showing that this is doing to our bodies. So, there's science behind all this.
Wow. Very, very interesting. Thank you for sharing that story.
Sure.
I also received a question today from the audience that I will share. And this comes from Sally Jones. Thank you, Sally, for your submittal. The question is, people do not view me or respond to me the way that I would like much of the time. Any thoughts on what I can do to fix it? Well, that's a long, loaded question. Yeah, there's lots of things. Actually, one of the very first positive pondering breakdowns that I ever wrote was in regards to this this topic. And I think, if recalling back, it's been many months ago, I was talking about how I was reaching out to various people via email or voicemail and things like that, and oftentimes not getting a response. It happens in general. A lot of, sometimes when I'm reaching out in regards to interviews and things like that. So, and being the sensitive type that I am, I could find myself being, having hurt feelings or feeling, slighted in some way for, someone not responding to me in the way that I want, or not responding at all. And I all of a sudden one day had an epiphany in regards to this, because there were several people that were trying to reach out to me that, for whatever reason, I was just too busy or viewed that it is not important, and I'd kind of blown off and completely forgot to respond to these people. And then it occurred to me all at once, like, here I am, upset, disgruntled about someone somewhere, I don't even remember at this time, not responding to me. It all of a sudden occurs to me, well, you're doing that same thing to someone else. And as soon as I realized that, I went and I responded to this person I'd completely forgotten and kind of blown off via email. And within an hour of that, someone else that I had, been disgruntled about responded to me. Now, I'm not saying it's always going to work out like this, but what it really helped to demonstrate to me is that everything is a reflection. So, what I would say, Sally, is if people aren't responding the way you'd like them to much of the time, first thing I would start looking at is, how are you responding to others? And is there a correlation there? And if there is, it's because life is a reflection. Everywhere you go, you're there waiting for you. It's mirrors everywhere. And so if you're getting that reflection back that you don't like, the best thing I can recommend is looking at yourself and seeing what's within yourself that they're mirroring. And whether or not maybe it's not that you're, maybe someone's treating you a certain way and you're not treating other people that same way, but maybe you're treating yourself that way. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're thinking of yourself in limited terms or not respecting in non-respectful ways to your own self. And I think oftentimes that's probably the number one offender, because people are going to reflect what you're thinking about yourself, what you're doing to yourself. They're all mirrors of you.
This is so true, Brandon. Yeah, my experience definitely confirms that. For sure, it's something that you can sort of turn inward when you're tempted to project it onto other people, right? And when you're tempted to say, oh, so-and-so is not treating me, the way that I want to be treated. This becomes, of course, very tricky when you're dealing with people who are close to you, right? And so it becomes a very compulsive sort of projection thing. You just can't stop thinking, oh, my husband, my wife, my children aren't giving me, I don't know, the love, attention, respect that I deserve, of course.
Right.
But it's, again, that's sort of like the temptation is just to project.
Right.
And you can use that as a tool to instead ask yourself, why do I feel the need to get this from them, right? Why do I need them to treat me a certain way? And of course, if you sort of follow that logic, you can see how it's going to lead you to, okay, why do I even care what anyone else thinks of me, right? Mm-hmm. You can totally take that and use it in a very constructive way to not care at all.
Right.
Not give a crap what anyone thinks of you. But of course, again, turn that sort of self-examination back onto yourself and say, okay, well, how do I want to feel in regards to the way anyone treats me, including myself, right? You can see how where that all leads. It
all starts with self. And that's actually something that we talk about in detail in, you just referenced Mark England, founder of ProCabYouLarry, ProCabYouLarry.org. We actually interview him, I forget, a few episodes back, and you can check that out in our archives, and I highly recommend it. We talk about, projections versus reflections. And speaking of, we actually, total side topic, but we've worked out a deal with ProCabYouLarry where they have their core language upgrade course where you basically spend a few minutes, 10 minutes a day for 21 days going through this whole language upgrade. Because one of the things we talked about in the podcast with him is, the usage of the word abracadabra, and that meaning essentially that you're creating with your words, you're creating your reality with your thoughts and words. And I love that. Mm-hmm. I love that whole idea. So that whole podcast, we talk about using words to create your reality and how you need to really investigate your it's crazy, but it's not something we're taught in school. How, there's many things we're not taught that we should be taught, but how are you thinking and speaking? Everything's got energy. Every word you use is a vibration. So you need to really understand how it works, how you weave your reality with your words. And so being such a big supporter of that program and having went through it myself, actually, I went to Mark and worked out a deal where anyone, any podcast, Positive Head podcast listener who would like to sign up for the ProCabYouLarry course at ProCabYouLarry.org, it's normally $299 with the code PositiveHead, all one word. You can get it for $199. Well worth every penny. It is a huge enhancement to your life, and it's great because it's something you can add to your your daily routine, 10 minutes a day. And even if you miss a day, you can come back and, catch up. So it's just digestible enough in our ADD society to learn and grow from and really have a great takeaway. And for $199, you definitely get something out of it that benefits your life and creates more happiness and abundance somewhere if you really take it seriously. So
it can have a huge potential impact, right? It's funny. Thanks to the podcast and the ProCabYouLarry course, you realize that, that word abracadabra everyone associates with magic, right? It's a magical word. Well, guess what? All your words are a lot more magical than you ever realized.
Exactly. So, aside from that, guys, thank you for tuning in for another Positive Head podcast. Please remember to give us a star rating on iTunes. Review us if you've got an extra 30 seconds. That would be awesome. Very well appreciative. Of course, sharing us on social media and so forth is also really appreciated. Telling your friends, family, anyone like that. We definitely, trying to get the word out there, trying to spread the positivity. And those of you out there helping us to do so, thank you. Aside from that, I guess we're not going to leave anyone with music today because we've been having an issue with some of our stuff getting flagged, right, Dalien?
Yeah, that's the case for now. I think we're going to have to just take a break from that for maybe a few episodes until we figure something else out. Maybe.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll see if we can maybe, like I said, get some different friends and things like that where we can post their music and it's not stuff that's in the algorithms out there where it's automatically grabbed because it's the Beatles or something. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning your beautiful brainwaves in, as always. And remember, as you're out there journeying throughout your day and your life, until next time, as long as you ain't dead, you're already positive ahead. Journey well, everyone.